Joining me now, I have James Kikonyo, who's a photographer, and you said the vice chair?
Yeah, Vice Chair of Photographers Association of Kenya.
Vice Chair of the Photographers Association of Kenya, and he's here to talk about tips and tricks to getting that perfect picture. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
All right. So nowadays, when it's like everybody can be a photographer, right? Thanks to mobile phone technology, and even the advancements with that, our phones have also made it very easy to take photos. It's not like back in the day where there was just that one guy that used to zurura with the camera and his lenses.
Yeah.
In many ways, like, the ability to take good photographs has been put in all of our hands.
Yeah.
But still, there's certain tricks, there's certain skills that one would need, or at least some sort of understanding that one would need to take good photographs. So as a photographer, you can walk us through the top 3 things someone needs to know as far as good photography is concerned.
All right. Basically, photography is not just clicking, as many people will put it. Photography is about telling a story. At the end of the day, you want to be able to put elements in a frame that can be able to pose one moment, freeze a moment for entirety, right? So in that regard, I think the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about professional photography, especially where you're trying to make money or make a living from it, the first thing should be, what story am I trying to tell? For example, if you're taking a photo of a bird, it's very different from when you're taking the photo of the president. So when you ask yourself what story comes to mind, then you can be able to arrange the elements in that story that will help someone universally. You see, a photo should be able to communicate to people who are deaf, people who have never heard a single word. A photograph should be able to communicate to even people who are illiterate, people who are in the village, grandmothers, and even people who have never seen a camera should be able to look at a photo and tell, I think this is what is happening. It should be a universal language. So that's the first tip I can say. What story are you trying to put across?
Right.
So that you can even be able to choose the right gear, whether it's the right lenses, the right lights, the right environment, or the right background, and also the right focus, because photography can be very technical.
Sure.
As much as phones have tried to create all these amazing technology, they even have those fit-in lenses. I could also say that there's a lot of mathematics or a lot of science that is involved in taking a photo.
Sure.
And when you even check the professional settings of the phones, they have all these settings that people do not really understand.
The apertures,
but of course, the ISO and all that.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I can say. What story are you telling?
Okay. But just before you move on, there's something very interesting you mentioned about, the way you take a photo of a bird is not the way you take a photo of a person, right? Maybe I wish we had, something to show our audience here, but maybe some clips, but maybe you can just try and help us visualize it. For example, like when I'm taking a picture of a bird, what sort of elements are you saying? Like, how would you guide someone if we could just sort of visualize taking the picture of a bird, and then you can walk us through taking the picture of a person?
Sure. Wildlife and birds especially is it's very tricky when you think about the fact that you cannot communicate to the bird. You cannot tell it this is how you should pose. You cannot tell it to move. If a bird is on a building, it's you to strategically stand where it is, and in that way you are able to take that photo in a way that shows just the bird and not showing anything else, because remember, birds are a bit small, they're not like people, meaning you have to focus the right way. You have to focus in a way that shows the elements of the bird that are a bit unique. For example, like a peacock, the male peacock has these feathers in its back that when it's trying to attract the female, it just unveils them. You have to take that photo in a way that focuses on those feathers and also shows on the beak.
Okay.
So you're focusing, you're really doing close range.
Okay.
You're trying to show the features of the bird.
Right.
If it's a hawk, if it's an eagle.
Right.
But
Okay,
when
so it's more detail
yeah,
oriented. It's either the
as much
detail or
detail
the
as
action
possible.
of it doing something.
Definitely. Although
right.
action,
those are harder to capture.
Action is harder to capture. I mean, I have a friend who took a photo of a kite. You know the way kites come for food. So it was a wedding and he was shooting the wedding and he was able to capture the action of the kite coming to the plate, picking a piece of chicken and flying away.
Nice.
And I thought to myself, wow, I've done it for 6 years now and I've tried my best and I've not been able to capture such a photo.
Okay.
So that's
What about your tips for taking photos of, say, people? Because that's what a lot of guys are doing. They want to take good photos of each other to post on social media, maybe even selfies. What are sort of like the rules of thumb that one should take for, I guess, phone portrait photography?
Phone portrait photography. Well, the key thing I would say is emotion. Try capture the emotion.
Those are always the best pictures.
Yes, because candids are what will help you sell out there. You see, anyone can take a photo. Anyone can be taught to click the shutter. But when you take a unique moment, that tear, that laugh, that giggle, or when a baby is, like maybe crying or wailing, or maybe I know Nairobi is not particularly safe for photographers, but if you can be able maybe to capture something like, that hawker when he's struggling with the, city county officers, that could be a better photo than just people standing and posing for a photo. So I would say capture the emotion. Try to capture also the environment. If someone maybe if it's a fashion model, it would be better if you capture a bit of maybe if it's not a studio, like if it's a park or something, can you capture a bit of the environment?
Okay.
So that the fashion complements where they are.
Sure.
Such that if I'm shooting maybe someone like Caroline Motoko in her office, then I'll capture that. But if I'm shooting someone else in their environment, then I'll also capture that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then finally, because you did mention the science behind photography. Yeah. Very quickly, can you tell us about ISO, aperture, and shutter speed?
Well,
a crash course in like 2 minutes.
Course. Wow, that's interesting.
So, I mean, basically, to make this easier, I have a cell phone. I want to be able to take better pictures. I don't have a camera, can't afford to buy one right now. But I, have this phone and I want to be able to make the most use of it. So if I'm taking photos, what should be the first thing of those things I touch, or what shouldn't I be touching, basically? Okay,
the thing I will appreciate about phones is that you don't have to use the professional setting. Most times phones will help you identify the amount of light or where you should focus. But in a situation that you want to use those professional settings, then a rule of thumb maybe should be ISO is adding light to the photo. So the higher the ISO, the more the light you add to the photo.
Right, but you also don't want to overdo it because it makes the picture
it makes it grainy. A bit grainy. So you want maybe for phones, maybe below ISO 300, 400 should be okay, right?
Okay.
Then f-stop is interesting. That's where you want to blur the image. It's also called aperture. So the lower the aperture, the more the image is blurred. Okay. So if you're shooting at I've not seen phones that have really low wide aperture rather, but if you use like f2.8, the background will be blurred, completely blurred. Okay. If you use f8, then everything will be in focus. Okay. So that's the subject plus the background. All right. Yeah, so again, it depends on what do you want to shoot. If you want to shoot everyone, of course, when you use wide aperture, just one person will be in focus. Of course, unless they're standing on the straight line, which is it's not common. Yeah. And maybe another thing I want to talk of is the shutter speed that again mobile companies are incorporating. so the faster the shutter speed, that's the quicker basically you'll be able to freeze the action.
Okay.
For example, when you're maybe shooting
someone, taking pictures of your kids playing soccer, you want a higher,
a faster shutter speed. Because if it's slow, then the photo will be blurred, not be able to capture the action. Yeah, so there is also that.
So those are just some pointers. Of course, this is a science, and you can go and study more about it. But certainly, if you were to master those 3 things, that should ideally make you a much better photographer.
Yeah, we call it the exposure triangle. It's the 3 basic elements of photography. Because photography is a science.
Great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the show, James. It's been good talking to you.
Amazing.
And hopefully you guys have learned a thing or 2 there about photography this morning on the show. And let me just read some SMSs as we get ready for our next break. Good morning, Joyce. I'm humbled for the call and making me part of the show. I really love the show. That was my caller today, Nicholas Asante Sana. Someone else says, good morning. I believe a high percentage of celebrities are forced to live a lie because that's what the public demands from them. But at the same time, there are a few that are realistic because they try making those who are idolizing them live to what is actually true and right. So thank you so much for that. That's in response to our previous discussion. But once again, thank you, James. Have a good weekend.
Yeah,
I'm sure you'll be out snapping photos all over the place.
Definitely. I love photography so much.
Excellent. All right, guys, we'll be back in just a bit with Jims and Dims crew joining us next.